Hi everybody, welcome back to Missy's Imaginings. Today I thought I would work on putting together one of the gowns for which the pattern is already available on my website. So if you go to missysimaginings.com, that'll open right to the blog, and from the blog you can access the menu, and if you look on the free stuff page, you'll be able to see the pattern. It's called Soft Whispers, and then on the ready to print page you can download the free PDF pattern for this gown. It was originally designed to go, it was part of one of my fairy paper doll set, paper doll books, and in this book there's lots of whimsical fairy type dresses and gowns and lots of wings. The dolls come in the back of the book. They're printed on cardstock. It's all color book style, so you can color it whatever colors that you would wish. But Soft Whispers is one of the designs. So a while back, it might have been during the Christmas season last year, I actually designed this pattern to fit the Wild Imagination Evangeline doll. So this is actually Parnilla, my little Parnilla friend here. So the dress, when it's done, it can either fit the resin version of these dolls, or it could also fit the vinyl version or plastic version of these dolls. So either way, the dress will work. You just might have to tighten a snap on the back for the resin. I think she's a little bit smaller. We'll compare them here. So she's just a little bit smaller than the plastic ones, but the measurements aren't that different. So yeah, and then this pattern for the Daylight Shimmer pattern is available on eBay and my website to purchase. So this pattern will fit Evangeline, but it also works for the new Fin and Arrow and Nora. It can fit her as well, and I've had this on that doll and it still fits her. So it's kind of it's kind of a taller halter style top, and then leggings, and we just tried it in gold here for fun, but it's kind of a little shimmery sequin outfit. So anyway, this pattern is available to purchase both on eBay and on my website. So if you want to check that out, you can. But I have kind of been neglecting my Evangelines. So I've been sewing so much for the resin, the tall BJDs, that I've kind of let these guys sit on the back burner for a while. So I thought it was time for her to get a new outfit. So we're going to be doing the Soft Whispers. I already have everything cut out, so we'll go ahead and start putting that together. So here you can see I have my pieces cut out. The pieces involve 2 pieces for the back, which look like this, that I've cut 2 pieces out of the pink underlayer, as well as 2 pieces out of a pink chiffon. Then it has 2 pieces for the side, which I've cut out 2 pieces for the side of the lining, and 2 pieces of pink chiffon. 1 piece of the center, so I've cut 1 out of the pink lining and 1 piece of the pink chiffon. Then it also has a lining for the top of the bodice, and so that involves 2 back pieces, 2 side pieces, and 1 front piece that are short because it's just going to line the neckline of the gown. So I've cut out these of just the lining fabric. Now with this fabric, this kind of lining, the lining isn't so bad, but this chiffon frays really, really bad, and it's really slippery. And so when cutting it out, I don't know if you can tell that it's wider than the actual pattern pieces, but I'm just going to leave that because I know it's going to fray and kind of be hard to work with, and I can always just work that into a seam allowance if I need to. But it just gets it from prevents it from getting too narrow because it's fraying and raveling. So I'll go ahead. Oh, I didn't cut the bottom of this one, so I better do that. So what I'm going to do first is what I always like to call my prep work. And by doing prep work, it means I take care of all the darts that might need to go in place. So on the front pieces and the front lining piece, and you'll see this on the pattern if you download it, there's darts at the top of the bust line, one on each side. So the front, the lining, and then the front chiffon all need to have that dart put in both of those places. So I'm going to do that first. And then also the next step I would do, I'm going to put the lining together. So I'm going to attach the front and the front sides, and then the back here. There we go. And I'll attach those. So I'll get the lining put together, because I want to serge the seam allowances on this because it frays, and I want to serge the hemline of this because it is going to be exposed inside my dress. But I don't want to hem the lining of this, because anytime you fold fabric, it creates more bulk and it creates more of a line that would show through such a sheer fabric. So instead of folding that and hemming it, I'm just going to serge the edges of the bottom hem of the lining of the bodice, so that it will lay real flat and it won't create more bulk underneath the front of the bodice. So hopefully I explained that well enough, and we'll get started putting in the darts. Now when I go ahead and put in the darts, especially sometimes you'll see patterns will put darts in and then have you trim or whatever, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to keep the darts, though it will add a little tiny bit of bulk, just because this fabric really frays, and I don't want to risk having that fabric fray and just disintegrate and then have it come apart. So these darts are not going to be trimmed in any way. I'm just going to sew the dart in, and then it will just fold over. So right now I'm going to mark my points, and because this fabric is so incredibly sheer, I don't really want to mark the darts, because that mark would come through. So what I'm going to do is I'm looking at my pattern piece, and I'm going to mark where the point is with a pin, and then I'm also going to mark those edges. So this is going to be the end of my dart, and then this piece I'm just going to bring those sides together on the pin, and that will form the line. So from this pinpoint down to this pinpoint is the line that I would sew. Let's see if I can get my finger out of the way so you can see that. So the line is going to start at this pinpoint and sew at an angle over to this pinpoint. So that way I can put in my dart without having to mark any ink or pencil on such a sheer fabric. And I kind of move the pins a little bit as I need to, so that it's not real bulky. So we'll see how this goes on such a real flimsy fabric. So there we go. We have the dart put in that will look like this. So it'll have the dart in place, and that dart will not have any ink or markings. Now on the chiffon, instead of back tacking, going down, back tacking, and taking out, cutting it, I don't want any thread residue showing under that chiffon. So I sewed down to the end of the dart on the fabric, then I swirled the fabric back. So now I'm just going to come straight back along the line I've already sewn. What that does is it makes so that your beginning and your ending are the same place. So now when I trim this seam allowance, then the trimmed seam is, the threads are up here. So when that opens up and it's see-through, there aren't going to be any thread tails hanging down underneath that chiffon. They won't show because I sewed all the way down, just turned the fabric around and came back. So it keeps it nice and pretty and finished without extra seams showing in there. So just kind of a little trick for working with chiffon if you don't want any thread tails to show underneath your chiffon, because that's so see-through. So hopefully that'll be a helpful tip. So here is the lining that will go around the doll, like this. So that's the lining of the bodice. I'm going to serge all these seam allowances and the hemline of this piece, and I'm going to also be putting together the pieces for the gown and the chiffon. Okay, so now all the pieces of the underneath part of the gown are put together. I'm not going to connect the backs because before I do, I'm going to serge that edge and make sure that that seam is finished, and then I'm also going to serge and finish all these seam allowances inside. So I have to do that on this part and the bodice lining. Now I'm going to go ahead and do the same steps I did here on the chiffon. So now all my pieces have been put together and I have 3 assemblies. So I have the bodice assembly, that's the inside lining. Then I have the basic undergown or lining gown, and then I have the overlay or the chiffon layer. All the seam allowances have been pressed from the center out, and this poor chiffon is just kind of a wreck, but I'm still going to go with it. I'm still going to see what we can put together here. So now, as you can see, I haven't sewn any of the seams together of these 2 pieces because the only seam that's actually going to be connected on this is the top of the bodice from like the sides just the top edge, and maybe part of the back to where it actually buttons, but that's all. So I'm not going to connect these layers yet. First, oh, I forgot to serge the bottom edge of this, which I'll do that. But now that I have everything put together and the seam allowances are all pressed towards the outside, these two layers are going to be layered with the right sides facing the same direction. So the good side of the lining is facing out, and now the good side of the chiffon is facing out. So these layers are going to be put together like this. And I'm going to match up those seam allowances, and those layers are going to be put together like this. Then I'm going to measure the ribbons that will be the shoulder straps, because they're going to attach at the top of the bust where the side seam and the front come together. They're going to be attached there, and they're going to loop around for the shoulder. So I'm going to have to put those, measure those and put those in, and then they're going to come around and attach probably about here on the back, and then the lining of the bodice is going to have the good side of the lining towards the good side of the chiffon, so that when we flip it inside out, then this will all be nice and finished with those shoulder ribbon straps showing, and then that chiffon will be free to just hang loosely above the undergown. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to fit it on the doll. See, and this is how this will come together in the back. So I'm going to fit it on here, and I'm going to measure with probably a good 3/4 inch extra. So there we go. So let's see. Okay, there. And it's going to come around the back. Okay. So I need 2 pieces. And here I'll measure this since you're watching, so you know how long this is. This is approximately right at 5¼ inches long. Okay, so now there's my shoulder straps. So I'm going to pin the center. So I'm going to pin these 2 layers together to hold them in place, matching up all my darts and my seams. And that shoulder, so now the shoulder, the good side is where I want the actual strap to be. So I'm going to layer that in with the selvage, or the part that I don't want to show, sticking outside the seam allowance. I'm going to pin that ribbon in place. I want this shoulder strap to connect down here. So let's see. Let's turn this way, and this is going to be, so it's going to make like a ribbon loop. So I take it with the same side of the ribbon that's against the good side is the same side that's going to go against the good side here. And it's going to be about halfway down that slope. That's about where I figured it would be. Let's see, same side. All right. And I'm going to angle it just like that with a 3/4 inch there. And I'm going to pin that in place. I want it to continue to lay flat. There we go. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. And I'll probably do a finger. That's about an inch from the end, inch from the end. So now I'll pin this one in place. There we go. So now with, oh, I should probably trim that. Don't need all those extra threads. Okay, and I'll add a couple more just for that top edge of the bust line to keep those lined up the way they're supposed to be. And that one looks like I've got a little extra, but that's okay. I'm gonna tuck there. Alright. Now that this is all in place, and my layers are where I want them, the straps are where I want them, now I'm going to take the bodice lining and it's going to be pinned with the right side towards this right side, and I'm simply going to move the pins from where they are, going to take them out and then move them to include all the layers. And this is the part where you have to be real careful to keep those straps exactly where you wanted them. Don't let them move. So now I'm going to stitch from right here, and I'm going to go up, and then I'm going to go all the way across the top, down this side, and then just right down to where that lining meets, and that's where I'm going to stop. And I'm not going to go all the way off of it. I'm going to stop just where those two seam allowances of that serging come together. That's where I'm going to stop. Being careful not to cut my seam thread. I'm going to trim those corners here. And I'm going to trim that corner where I rounded it. But I'm not going to cut that ribbon. here. Gonna trim that. Alright, so now we'll turn the lining to the inside. See how this works. Turning out that corner. There we go. And I'm going to turn that. Let's see how it's laying out there. Alright, so there's this part. And now this can be pressed along this top seam just to press that seam flat. And now I'll go ahead and put it on the doll just to see how it's going to fit. If it's all good, then I'll probably trim those seam allowances on the inside. We'll see here. It's going to fit her. It looks like. Going to be good. Okay. So there we go. Oh, a little bit of bulkiness, but not too bad. With the right sides together, I'm going to sew the chiffon layer, the back seam, and then the gown seam from this point down to the hemline, down to there. So here's my corners, and I'm going to come into, right, so it's right above, right where I ended the stitching for this part. Now I'm going to go up inside here, and I'm going to stitch from up in here down to the hemline. And I'm going to be careful not to catch any of the lining part of the gown, just the chiffon. And then once that seam is, and both of these seams will be pressed open. So first the chiffon layer. So with the chiffon out of the way, pulling it up out of the corner, now, and that selvage, now I'm going to stitch the bodice skirt back together. Once again, right from that spot where I stopped sewing before. It's kind of hard to get in there, but you can do it. Gonna sink my needle before I get in there, and then I'll turn it. Now we'll turn it right side out and check it out. See if I did any major blunders. So now on the back will overlap slightly, so you can put a snap there, and then both the chiffon, well, the chiffon is free from the skirt, so it can hang freely. Press it. On this hem, I didn't do a single needle rolled hem just because I didn't want to mess with taking my machine all apart. So what I did is I just did a regular 2 needle narrow hem, and I'm going to fray check this little bit down here at the bottom. Fray check keeps things from fraying. It's great for little bits on that where I can it's like glues it and keeps it from fraying, and then when that's good and dry, then I'll just snip that off. So here's the gown. It just needs a snap on the back here where it closes. So I'll do the snap, and then I'll probably trim that seam allowance inside to get rid of a little bit of that bulk in the bust line. So here's her gown or dress all finished, and I added the little roses, a few little beads on the front, then the back has the little ribbon roses and some ribbons with beads and a snap. So the only other thing that I didn't mention was on the inside, I went ahead and matched up all the seams for the dress and the seams for the bodice lining, and then just tack them down to hold that facing inside in place so it wouldn't want to kind of roll up and be all bulky. And then I did trim that seam allowance, and then as I mentioned, when I'm sewing, I added just a couple little darts right here to kind of make that fit a little bit better. So there it is, all finished. So there we go, we'll spin her around. So there is the soft whisper pattern for Evangeline, all sewn and put together, and you can access that on the website. And then the other news before I leave is in October, on the, I think it's the 13th, it's the second Saturday in October, I'm going to be doing a doll show called the Wagon Wheel Dollars Doll Show. Dollars like people who do dolls are dollars, not like money dollars. It's kind of funny. The spelling kind of throws people, and spell check always catches it. So anyhow, it's the Wagon Wheel Dollars Doll Show in Rickreall, Oregon. And I'll go ahead and post a link below. It's at the Polk County Fairgrounds. So I'm not sure if they actually have like their own website for the show, but the information is on the website for the Fairgrounds. So I will go ahead and find that online, and I'll post a link. So if you're local and you want to come say hi at the doll show, you can come and find me. It'll just be easy to find because my table has hydrangea table skirting and my sign will say Missy's Imaginings. So you can come by and say hi, and I'd love to talk and chat with you on Saturday. I think it's the 13th. So anyhow, have a great day, happy sewing, and I'll see you next time.